The storm rolled over the Texas plains like a restless beast that wouldn't sleep. Wind howled across the open land, blowing at fences, shaking barns, and swallowing every sound but its own. Out there in the middle of nowhere stood Clearwater Station, a forgotten patch of wood and iron, its lights flickering weakly in the heart of winter. It was past midnight when Ethan Cole, one of the wealthiest cattlemen in the region, drove through that storm in his black truck. The road was nearly invisible under the blanket of snow, but Ethan had ridden through worse. His ranch, Cole's Haven, was the largest for miles, and so was the emptiness inside it. Ethan had money, land, respect, but no warmth in his world. Since the accident 3 winters ago, the one that had taken his fiancée, he'd lived like a ghost wearing a cowboy hat. People called him the Iron Rancher, a man too hard to bend, too cold to break. But fate doesn't care how rich or broken you are. It always finds a way to surprise you. As he neared the deserted station, Ethan spotted something through the haze. A small figure sitting on the wooden bench, motionless, covered in snow. At first he thought it was a statue, maybe a forgotten bag. But then the shape moved. He slammed the brakes, jumped out and trudged toward it. "Hey!" he shouted against the wind. "You all right?" The figure turned. Under the dim orange lamp, he saw a young woman, maybe in her late 20s. Her lips blue, her eyes half closed. She wore a thin grey coat, torn at the sleeve, and a nurse's badge hanging loosely from her pocket. I missed my train," she whispered, barely audible. Ethan pulled off his jacket, wrapped it around her, and lifted her like she weighed nothing. Her body was freezing cold, her breath faint. "You'll freeze to death out here," he muttered, carrying her to his truck. Inside, he cranked the heater to full blast and glanced at her again. Snow melted off her hair, revealing soft brown curls and a face that might have been smiling once upon a time. "What's your name?" he asked. "Clara," she murmured weakly. "Clara Hayes." "Where were you headed, Clara?" She closed her eyes. "Ridgefield. I'm a nurse. Got a job at the hospital there." "The train?" Her voice trembled. "It didn't stop." Ethan frowned. No train stopped at Clearwater. The tracks were used only for cargo now. Someone must have told her wrong. Or maybe she'd gotten lost, trying to start over, like so many broken souls before her. "Well," Ethan said, starting the engine, "you're lucky I found you first." The drive back to the ranch was quiet. Clara sat wrapped in his jacket, shivering still, her eyes fixed on the dark storm. Ethan didn't speak much either. He kept glancing at her from the corner of his eye, the way her fingers curled for warmth, the sadness in her expression, the quiet strength behind it. When they reached the ranch, Ethan helped her inside. The warmth from the fireplace hit instantly. The old ranch house smelled of pine wood and leather. Clara's eyes wandered. Pictures of horses, a guitar in the corner, a woman's photograph on the mantel. Ethan noticed her gaze and quickly looked away. "That was someone I knew," he said softly before she could ask. She nodded, understanding more from his silence than any words. He poured her some hot tea. "You should rest," he said. "You're safe here." "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling with gratitude. "You didn't have to stop. Most people wouldn't." "I'm not most people," he said with a small, tired smile. They talked a bit about where she came from, how she'd been trying to start a new life. She'd lost her father during the pandemic. Her mother was ill, and she had no one else. Nursing was her way to survive, to help others when she couldn't help herself. Ethan listened quietly, and for the first time in years, he felt something stir inside him, a reminder that compassion still existed, that not every soul in the world was out to take something from you. The storm worsened. Snow lashed against the windows like claws. When lightning cracked, Clara flinched, and Ethan instinctively reached out, his hand brushing hers. "It's all right," he said gently. "You're safe here, I promise." And for a long moment she believed him. She fell asleep by the fire, curled up under a blanket. Ethan stayed awake, watching the flames reflect in her peaceful face. Something about her presence filled the silence that had haunted him for years. When dawn broke, the world outside was buried in white. Ethan brewed coffee while Clara stirred awake. "You look better," he said, offering a mug. "I feel better," she said with a faint smile, "but I should go once the road's clear. The hospital's expecting me." Ethan nodded, though a part of him didn't want her to leave. You can stay until the storm passes. Ridgefield's too far in this weather. She hesitated, then smiled softly. Thank you, Mr. Cole. Ethan, he corrected. Just Ethan. The next few days passed quietly. The storm refused to end, trapping them both in that old house. Ethan showed her around the ranch, the stables, the horses, the endless white fields. She laughed for the first time in days when one of the colts nudged her coat pocket, looking for treats. You've got a soft touch, Ethan said, smiling genuinely for once. They don't let just anyone that close. Maybe they can sense kindness, Clara replied. He looked at her for a moment too long, the words hitting deeper than she knew. That night they cooked dinner together, simple stew and bread. For a man who'd eaten alone for years, Ethan found himself enjoying the quiet company. She asked about his ranch, and little by little he told her. About the drought that nearly ruined him. About the accident that took his fiancée, Sarah, and left him broken. I stopped believing in luck that day, he said, his voice rough. Stopped believing in anything, really. Clara reached
across the table, her hand resting gently on his. Sometimes we stop believing, because it hurts too much to hope again, she said softly. But hope doesn't die, Ethan. It just waits for someone to remind us. Her words pierced through the walls he'd built. For a while they sat in silence, the sound of the storm fading outside, two broken hearts finding pieces of themselves in the warmth of shared pain. When she stood to leave the table, her legs gave way. Ethan caught her before she hit the floor. She'd been weak, still recovering from frostbite. Easy there, he said, steadying her. Their faces were inches apart. For a second, the world stopped. No storm. Number pain, no years of loneliness, just two souls staring into something they didn't understand yet. Clara stepped back quickly, blushing. I'm sorry, she murmured. Don't be, Ethan said softly. Just, get some rest. That night he couldn't sleep. He kept hearing her soft breathing from the guest room down the hall. Something had changed inside him and he couldn't fight it anymore. When morning came, the sky cleared. But before the snow melted, Ethan found a letter on the kitchen table. It was from Clara. Ethan. I can't thank you enough for saving my life. You gave me warmth when I had none, safety when I was lost. But I can't stay. I have to keep moving, not because I want to leave, but because I'm afraid of wanting to stay. Please don't look for me. I won't forget you. Clara. Ethan read the letter over and over, the words burning into him like brand marks. He stepped outside, the wind biting at his skin. And she was gone. No tracks, no sign, just the quiet echo of her name in the snow. But for the first time in years, Ethan felt something else, a reason to breathe again. He looked at the sky and whispered, Then I'll find you, Clara Hayes, even if it takes the rest of my life. The cold wind carried his words across the plains, and somewhere out there, destiny smiled. 3 months passed since that stormy night when Ethan Cole found Clara Hayes half-frozen. At the Clearwater station, the snow had melted into muddy trails. The wind no longer bit at his face, and spring had come to the ranch. But inside him, winter had never left. He went about his days feeding horses, checking cattle, signing contracts. Yet every quiet hour ended the same way, with him staring at the letter she'd left behind, the edges worn from being unfolded too many times. Every word haunted him. Please don't look for me. I'm afraid of wanting to stay. He couldn't move on. He couldn't forget. One morning, Ethan saddled up his black stallion, Ranger, and made a decision he hadn't allowed himself before. He was going to Ridgefield. He didn't know what he'd say. Didn't even know if she wanted to see him, but he needed to see her once more. The road to Ridgefield was long, cutting through dry canyons and dusty trails. The town itself was bigger, livelier, far from the loneliness of Clearwater. It smelled of coffee, smoke, and ambition. The first person Ethan spoke to was a shopkeeper, asking about Ridgefield General Hospital. Just down that way, sir, the old man said. You looking for someone? Ethan smiled faintly. Maybe. Inside the hospital, the air smelled of antiseptic and hope. He walked down the hall, his boots echoing against the tiled floor, drawing curious looks from nurses and patients alike. A man like him, tall, broad-shouldered, in a cowboy hat and leather jacket, didn't belong in a place like that. And then through a half-open door, he heard a voice he could never forget. Hold still, sweetheart, this won't hurt. Clara. She was bandaging a little girl's arm, her voice calm and warm, her smile soft. Ethan froze where he stood. The last time he saw her, she was trembling in the snow. Now she looked strong, alive, her hair tied back neatly, her uniform crisp, her hands steady as they worked with care. When the girl left, Ethan finally stepped forward. You haven't changed much, Clara Hayes. She turned, and for a second, time stopped. Her eyes widened, the color draining from her face. Ethan? She whispered. How? How did you... Fendio? He smiled sadly. I guess I never stopped trying. She stood silent, searching his face for answers. Maybe for anger, but found only sincerity. You shouldn't have come, she said softly. I left for a reason. I know, he said, taking off his hat. But I needed to know you were safe. That's all. Her lips trembled, torn between gratitude and guilt. I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't, he said quietly. You saved me. They stood there in silence, the hum of hospital machines around them, the weight of unsaid words between them. After her shift, they walked to a nearby cafe. The town glowed in the evening sun, and for a while it felt almost normal. Clara told him about her new life, how she'd been working double shifts to send money home, how her mother's health had improved. I'm trying to build something, she said. Something steady. I can't keep depending on miracles. Ethan looked at her, his voice low. And what if the miracle wasn't luck, Clara? What if it was meant? She looked away, eyes glistening. I don't believe in fate anymore, Ethan. I believe in choices. He nodded slowly. Then choose. But don't let fear make it for you. That night they walked through Ridgefield's quiet streets. The air was warm, but a storm of emotions brewed between them. She told him she couldn't promise anything. Her life was complicated. Her heart unsure. He simply said, then I'll wait. However long it takes. But fate, as always, had its own plans. A week later, Claire was called to a medical emergency, a mine explosion just outside town. Dozens were injured. She rushed out with her team before dawn, not knowing Ethan was already on his way to see her again that same morning. When he reached the ridge, chaos filled the air, smoke, fire, screams. And there she was, in the thick of it, treating the wounded without hesitation. Ethan shouted her name, but she didn't hear him. Then suddenly, a crack echoed from the collapsing mine structure. A beam fell toward her. Ethan didn't think. He ran. He pushed her out of the way just in time, the beam striking his shoulder and throwing him to the ground. Hessen, she screamed, kneeling beside him. Oh my God. He gritted his teeth, pain shooting through his body. You're okay? You idiot, she cried, tears streaming down her face. Why would you? Because I couldn't lose you again, he said, voice faint. Hours later at the hospital, Ethan lay in a bed, his shoulder bandaged. Clara sat beside him, refusing to leave. For the first time, she saw the vulnerability in the man who had once seemed unbreakable. When he awoke, she was still there, holding his hand. You should have let me take the hit, she whispered. I'm trained for this. I don't care, he said, smiling weakly. You're worth the pain. She laughed through her tears. You're impossible. I'm persistent, he corrected. That night, as rain fell outside, she finally broke the silence that had been eating at her for months. Ethan, when I left your ranch, I wasn't just afraid of staying. I was afraid of falling in love with someone who'd already lost everything. I didn't think you had room left in your heart. He turned his head slowly toward her. Clara, the truth is I thought I'd buried my heart with Sarah, but that night, when I found you at the station, something told me maybe I was wrong. Maybe love doesn't die. It just waits for the right person to remind you what it feels like. She covered her mouth, her eyes welling up. I don't know what the future looks like, he continued, but if you'll have me in it. Even for a day, that's enough. She leaned forward and kissed his forehead gently. Then stop waiting, she whispered, because I'm already here. The rain outside softened into a drizzle and the night grew still. Weeks later, Ridgefield buzzed with whispers. People spoke of the cowboy who risked his life for a nurse, of the woman who melted the heart of the richest man in town. They called it a love story that shouldn't have happened, a tale of fate, loss and healing that shocked everyone who thought love had limits. And on a warm summer evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Clara moved into Cole's Haven. The ranch no longer felt empty. The wind that once howled with sorrow now sang with life. Horses galloped freely and laughter returned to the porch. One night, Ethan stood by the old fireplace, the same one that had saved her life from the cold. Clara joined him, resting her head on his shoulder. You know, she said softly, I used to think I was lost that night at the station. He smiled. You weren't lost, Clara. You were coming home. And as the fire crackled between them, Ethan realized that sometimes the coldest nights lead to the warmest hearts. The end. If you love this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful cowboy love tales like this one, where every storm hides a second chance.